Hello, everybody, and good afternoon. Welcome to our Community Health and Wellness Nights. Tonight is going to be slightly different if you have tuned into us in the past for our webinars. We're actually going to be opening up more an open discussion conversation around weight loss through personal development. So Dr. Lee and I will be having some discussions around it with you throughout our webinar, and we're going to ask that you chime in with any of your questions that you have. But tonight, what I wanted to start off with, if we could, is first off a little question that I'm going to ask, and I'm looking for those who are attending tonight to pop in some of their answers. And what we're looking for, just to kind of start off tonight's webinar, is to look around and think about some of your doubts and your fears that you currently have around your progress and your performance. And we're going to actually try and respond back to that throughout this talk. And if we're unable to get to all of our questions, we'll be able to come back to you afterwards. So we're just going to take a few moments here, the next 2 to 3 minutes. And I'm going to ask that those who are attending, you can write down anonymously there in our comments and tell us what some of your doubts and fears are. So we're just going to hang in tight here for a few minutes, and then we'll get started while you're answering those questions. So I've just, for those are unaware of how to write in the chat there, I've just popped down in there. Please write your answers here. So please jump on board there and pop any of those questions that you have. We just have a few more just joining in now. So if you're just joining us, I do have a question that I've asked everybody at the current moment. If you're able to join us and write down some of your fears and doubts that you have about your performance or your progress and your challenges as you go on through. And we're hoping to be able to answer some of those throughout our webinar here, as our talk tonight is weight loss through personal development. So we're going to be tackling some of those mindset pieces, those cognitive pieces as well in there that not only help you with your weight loss, but can also help you along all aspects of life as we get going. So please pop on board and ask away. You do have anonymous areas there. So we've got a few questions in here already, Dr. Lee. And so please, other folks out there, please keep on writing in those questions. We're just going to quickly touch base on those. We're not going to answer those immediately because I do have a few other questions I'm going to ask. But just to let everyone know the type of questions that we're going to be possibly going over. Whether I actually have it in me to really change my lifestyle. So the concern if we actually have that ability to do so. And we have another answer in here. I'm worried about sustaining the habits I'm learning after this year is done. So two really good questions that most individuals typically come up with upon our consult or during the beginning of the program, and then mid again as we get going. So keep on popping those in as you get going. And let me.
I just want to say one thing, Samantha.
Yeah.
If you don't feel comfortable writing down kind of what some of your obstacles are, or your biggest obstacle, your biggest fear, just keep it aside. And for the individuals who are here live with us, we encourage you to send it to us by email, and we will respond, in kind to give you support so that you can have some answer, some direction. Okay, if you don't want to, so I see here Suzanne Ferguson chat is disabled. Okay, so
I'm still getting the questions, so I did see the disabled, so I do apologize if you guys are having a little trouble popping in, but I'm still getting your questions as you get going. So Dr. Lee's right. We're going to answer some of them. If those folks that are watching is post review as well, Dr. Lee did mention email. So that email is going to be info@howclinics.com. And that's where we're going to collect some of those answers post as well. And just to kind of touch base on some of the other questions, it's my first time here. I'm worried that I won't have the willpower to make change. Then I have another, will I be successful at keeping the weight off? So that the fear factors are within there in a lot of these elements here for something new for these individuals. So thank you for those that have popped in a few questions. There's still more out there that can pop those questions in as we go. That chat will remain open, and we'll be collecting those questions as we get going. Now, I have 3 hot questions here that are separate from the ones that we were just asking. Now, I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen here for a moment so you can right there. Excellent. So hello, it's Samantha Upshall here from Cow Clinics, and then Dr. Lee is with us also. So we'll be in the open discussion today around weight loss through personal development. Now, number 1 question here I've got for you guys. So here's some thoughts as we get going. So if you had a choice to choose, what would you choose? The golden egg or the goose that lays the golden egg? So I'm wondering if some of you answer in the same fashion in the same areas we were doing there as well, and putting that answer down. What would you choose, the golden egg or the goose that lays the golden egg? We are quite curious to see what you think about that. So we're just going to take a few moments there. All right, we've got someone picking a goose. And we'll get a few more. So as we sit here, so as we said, are you going to choose the golden egg or the goose that lays the golden egg itself? Okay. Good. So the goose, then I have the opportunity for more eggs. Wonderful. Excellent. There we go.
Great.
So next question then. I'm actually going to transit, if that's okay, Dr. Lee, if I go into the next question. Beautiful. Yeah. So what we're going to look at here is, if you can let us know, we've already asked a few little questions in there about your fears and things like that, but what is the meaning of success then for you? So what is your personal meaning of success? And I'd like to see some of those answers in here as well. As we guide this open discussion in the next few minutes as we get going. So what is your meaning of success? And while you're thinking about that question, I'm going to just attach the third right in there as well. So while you guys are typing that down, you can add it into the response. While you're thinking about what is the meaning of success, I'd like to know, what is your greatest asset? So far we're getting a few in there. So success for me would be a good health and a happy life. That is good. So we definitely have some more questions in regards to some of these answers that come in. It never just ends at an answer and a full stop. There's always whys and more questioning in there as we get going. So let's keep on answering in there. We're going to see, what is your meaning of success? And what is your greatest asset? So somebody put in here that they'll pick goose, success with the diet. And then the greatest, I'm not sure if the greatest success is the health and fitness and happiness, but I think that may be the meaning of success for this individual in there as well. Oops, sorry. And then we've got healthy lifestyle written down. So thank you everyone for popping in your answers there, because it's going to help guide our open discussion today as we get going and actually answering the questions that you're personally looking for. And that's what we're here to help you with, is that personalized, directed care through your personal weight journey as we get going. Not just weight, but your life journey as well. So great asset is keep trying. That's right. So the individual that has actually popped that question there, absolutely, and great dedication. Keep on trying, and you know what? It's something that we always have to continue striving for, not just when we get to our goal, but it's continuing from that as well. So great job, folks, there with answering that. Greatest asset is determination. Absolutely. I hope that we all learn a little determination We'll have it more in different areas of our life, but we can definitely reflect on those to help us as we get going. So I think that's where we're at the end of our questions coming in there, Dr. Lee.
Yeah.
I don't think we can still answer in, and we'll still monitor those as we get going.
And for those that want to continue, who hasn't answered and want to put something in, go right ahead and we'll continue monitoring the chat. But we all appreciate for those who come here live to webinars to expand their knowledge. It speaks volumes to your dedication, personality for change and development. And so for those that know me, I've been doing this for a bunch of years now, and I've had so many iterations with respect to my program, from pure body hacking using the latest science to the therapies and then we progress over time as we evolve, we understand things more and more. And so one of the biggest thing that I've come to learn is self-discovery through all the things that we go through. This journey that you're going through at this point is no different from other journeys that you probably have in your professional career, maybe in your personal career. And the way we respond to these journeys, the ups and downs, is going to be very similar, is pattern based and stuff like that, right? And so, understanding how we handle these things, our vision, the way we see things, is going to be super important in terms of success for weight loss. And so through all this, we were really good at succeeding and helping our patients succeed in weight loss in general. But one of the pursuit that I had was, how do I make it more permanent? Obviously, and you hear a lot about the yo-yo diets that are going on, and more so I think in the past, and so in the last few years, there's better medications, there's more recognition of other components of weight loss that is necessary for more long-lasting weight loss. And so in the pursuit of helping my patients in my clinic here find ways to maintain their weight loss as much as possible. Nothing's is going to be perfect. Nothing is forever. Nothing is 100%. But if I can increase your probability somehow, some way, obviously that's a better position to be in. And so in doing that, I come to the realization that a lot of it stems from actually our personal development that we're going through. As you're going through this journey, if you've done weight loss, you might have done it for many years. You've had lots of up and downs. You might have tried, you might have reverted back, you might have been successful, you might have done it multiple times. But the fact that you're here, speaks to your personality and your character, your philosophy, maybe in life too, as well. But sometimes we don't think enough about all of this. And I think that's kind of the crux of it, right? So I'm going to go back to some of the questions that Samantha did at the very beginning. So I'm going to just read a few. So there, one of the fears is whether I have it in me to really change my lifestyle. I'm worried about sustaining my habits. And it's my first time here. So the willpower, I won't have the willpower to make change, right? And so I'm going to start off by actually apologizing to the people here. And I've done this multiple times. And I was very cognizant of this in one of my consults this afternoon, actually. And the reason why I apologize is, as a practitioner who does weight management, I do a lot of other things too. It's really, really tough. It's probably one of the toughest discipline to actually practice in, because there's so much involved. You're dealing with, the medical part, you're dealing with the science part, then you have to deal with the psychosocial mental part too as well, all in one. If you actually truly want to be really successful in helping someone change for the better and long-lasting change. And I think we're all after that, right? And so, and I gave a lecture about a couple of weeks ago to the bariatric center here in Guelph Hospital, and the second last slide that we had was expectations. So, as practitioners, the recommendation is that we should hone in the individual's expectation when it comes to weight loss. So, the expectation is, 5 to 10% is good weight loss, because why? You start to have medical benefit. But as you all know, depending on where you start off, some people want 20%, 30%. 40%. We've had people lose close to 50% of their weight in our clinics, right? And so from a medical teaching perspective, that was actually in the slides that they gave me to talk about, right? And so, and I gave it without much thought, but then like a couple of days after, I was reading a book, and it just dawned on me, and it's like, oh my God, I just put some limitations on my patients. And so I was reminded of this story actually of about a farmer who was walking along his pumpkin patch, and the pumpkins were actually really small. They're starting to grow. And so he walks along, and there's this pumpkin, and beside the pumpkin there's this jar. And so he decided, well, I'm gonna put this pumpkin in this jar. And so several months goes by, and he comes back to the same area, and he sees the pumpkins. They're nice and big. They're ready to harvest and whatnot. And then there's this little pumpkin that's in this jar that hasn't grown beyond the size of the jar, has taken the shape of the jar. And so it's like, an abnormal, anomaly sort of, but whereas the rest of the pumpkins in the jar. And so, really that limitation that we have, a lot of times we actually put on ourselves. A lot of times, now, don't get me wrong, we have a lot of negative feedback from people, negative criticisms from people as well. And you know what? And that's why I apologize, because, we try not to directly say you should just lose 5 to 10%. We indirectly, imply that, hey, you know what, 5 to 10% is good enough. But hey, you know what? It's not good enough, to be honest. You should accept that, right? In the sense that, you know what, if you want to live your life to the fullest, then you should aim for the stars, and wherever you may land, in the moon or beyond the moon, it doesn't matter, right? And so it's not about impossible. It's not about, that it's impossible to do. So nothing's impossible, actually, right? So if you think about that, for example, if I'm not sure, I'm a father of two, and you guys might be parents as well. And would you ever say to your kid, stop trying to walk, after the 10th time he's fallen, right? He's going to do it eventually. So you encourage him, you encourage him. But then sometimes we don't actually encourage ourselves enough as an adult, right? So you would never set that limit on your child. So why are we doing it to ourselves, first of all? And the other thing is that, when the baby is born, I remember, when Julian was born, and we were trying for 5 years. So it's very emotional for us, right? And like, he had, in my mind, no limitations. That he had to be anything in this world. But you know what? It's so funny, because like he's 8 now, and he's like, you really want to be a YouTuber and an astronaut? And that's what he wanted. And I find that really, strange, two different, different disciplines, I should say. But I said to him, and I'm thinking about all the things I'm learning after these years of reading all these books and stuff like that. And it's like, you know what? I shouldn't let him, I shouldn't impose him. I ask that question, and it's like, hey, you know what? Be realistic, sort of, right? I should let him imagine of all the things he do, because as we get older, I think we lose creativity. We don't imagine enough, right? And so that's, I think, and a lot of our doubts will stem from this self-limitation that we have. So that's just a little story that I had about that. And so, and hopefully what we're going to be talking about, I know I'm going to be rambling a little bit, and, please, anybody who has some input, and, even though you guys come to us for support and advice, we learn just as much as you do, because we learn how you behave, and we learn, the things you do right, maybe the things you do wrong. And remember, we pass it on to other individuals. Okay. So, keep in mind that you will influence other people indirectly too as well, right? So I learn as much as from my patients as they learn from me too as well.
I have a question, Dr. Lee,
Yeah.
just to kind of pop out there for the community here as well. And it's actually got to do with what you're speaking of in regards to that inner childhood curiosity.
Yeah.
And, I just want to ask all you folks that are watching is, at what stage in life, where did that inner curiosity go? Where did it go?
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. Yeah, when did we start losing that imagination? Because like my kid's 8, and they're still role playing. I'm seeing that still. For myself, Samantha, for myself, I think middle school.
Middle
you know
school?
yeah, you get the peer pressure, you want to conform, a
Yeah.
little bit, and wearing the same clothes, and people are making fun of you and that kind of stuff. And I'm Asian, obviously, and I went to predominantly a Caucasian school, and so you were singled out a little bit and stuff like that. So for me it was middle school, so everybody's different. And so
Yeah.
I just want you to reflect on yourself, because to learn from your past, you have to reflect, right? You have to do some self-examination. And so hopefully this kind of seminar will prompt that in all of us, right? It's just kind of thinking a little more. So yeah, that's a very interesting question. So for myself, what about you, Samantha?
You know what, as you're sitting there stating, I was trying to think of where or when it went. And I think it was more, actually, it happened more of me when I became more of a mom, because I was thinking more of the creativity for others versus
Mm-hmm.
myself at that time. And it kind of transitioned on.
Mm-hmm.
Things became overwhelming. And then that curiosity and that became a scarcity to try new things at that point. But I am finding now more as I teach and listen to our conversations back and forth and listening to
Mm-hmm.
yourself as well, that I'm getting more of that curiosity, fun piece back in
Awesome.
again. And that being, I always want to tap in, and I think about that. It's a 14-year-old for me.
Mm-hmm.
How can I be 14 today?
Yeah.
What is it about that 14-year-old that gave me so much joy? And it was just the open heartedness, and just looking at the world brand new, and it's sometimes that we have to do it again because we see so many things in the world right now, but we don't know what's actually sitting in front of us. We see it too
Absolutely.
much that the brain just kind of tunes it out, but
Mm-hmm.
is to refresh that and to look at it again. So it is something that has to be an action.
Yep.
It's not something that's just natural that kind of comes along. It has to be
Mm-hmm.
an actionable thought.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in that. And so one of the questions that Samantha asked you guys was, which would you choose, right? If you had a choice to choose, so you choose a golden egg, and or the goose that laid the golden egg. And so I think it's unanimous that everybody chose the golden egg, of course. But my follow-up question to that is, for yourself, if you chose that, where is your golden egg? I mean, sorry, where is your golden goose? The goose that laid the golden egg. Where is that? What is that to you? What entity is that? So you know what to choose, because you want to choose something that will perpetuate whatever your golden egg may be. It could be monetary, it could be success, it could be love, it could be relationships, all that kind of stuff. But have you ever thought about what that entity is for yourself? And I think that's more a fundamental question, right? And and this lends to the next question that Samantha asked, is what is your biggest asset? Now, obviously, everybody's different, and please don't think that your answer is wrong. It's just a different way of thinking things. And I like these kind of open seminars because just a different perspective of things. And if I can make you do an aha moment, that's great. I'm super happy. If you make me do an aha moment, I've learned something too as well, right? And so, what's your greatest assets? A lot of times we actually don't know what the goose is, where the goose is. And so if you did know the goose, if you did know, where the goose is or what the goose is, would you not want to nurture it? It's maybe, instead of laying one egg per month, you may want to lay like 2 eggs per month or 3 eggs per month, perhaps. I'm just being greedy here, right? But that's a very interesting question, and we don't think about that enough, or maybe we never thought about that. And so in self-discovery, I'm going to go off on a little tangent here. In self-discovery, you have to learn to interrogate yourself, get used to it, and it's really difficult to interrogate yourself because obviously you're maybe opening up wounds, opening up, scars and that kind of stuff. But it's necessary for us to move forward, and to learn to grow, right? And if you don't grow, time will continue to pass on, and so we stay still, right? And we don't change, right? And so we can move forward. And so always, in my clinic, I always ask my patients, ask yourself questions. That's the way things do. That's the way it should be done. So so if you've had a bit of time to think about where the goose is, you might want to write it down somewhere, But I'll tell you, I guess, from my perspective, where I think the goose is, and and we all have it. First of all, okay, we all have this golden goose. Sometimes we just don't recognize it, right? And we don't invest time in it. And really, it sits on top of our shoulders. It's between our ears. It's our brain. It's our mind. Whatever you want to call it. Really, it's your mind. That is your goose that lays the golden egg. And the reason for that I feel is that that that's where all your power and potential and possibility comes from. You know, back to kind of limitations. Where do the limitations come from? Right? Where do you, when you want to do something, you want to enact something, you want to go to the movie, what do? You have to have a thought. There is no getting around all the things that you want to do without a thought. And if you come to our clinic, we tell you that 70% of your thoughts are negative, unfortunately, in the day. And you have thousands, actually, you have over 50,000 of thoughts that run through your mind per day. That's a lot. And unfortunately, it is negative. And the reason for that is it's just survival, right? The body will do what it can to protect you. So, for example, in PTSD, people, suppress some of the emotions because it's uncomfortable. You know what I mean? When you're in pain or you're running away, all these things, a fight or flight, it's really survival. But all the things you do, right, requires you to have some form of thought. And so it stems from that. And so one of the famous lines that I've read is that, you become what you think. So you become what you think. So if you have a lot of negative thoughts, you might have more of a tendency to be more negative or view the world in more of a negative approach, right? And so that's kind of what it means. And so another way to put it, in Bible terms, is you reap what you sow, right? And so you sow what? You sow the thoughts that that you create and whatnot. And obviously, over time, if you, for example, have 10 thoughts, okay, and one of them, so 9 of them are negative thoughts. Well, that thought and one that's positive, those 9 thoughts are going to grow into something more, right? So, thoughts just come randomly. Have you ever had a thought and it keeps on going, perpetuates another thought that kind of adds on? So for if you're late and then, okay, I'm going to get a job, then I'm going to get a job, then I'm going to meet my partner, I can't go on a trip, and all these things cascade and happens, right? Because of one thought. So imagine that, right? But if you have 9 positive thoughts, like whatever it may be, and 1 negative, well, you're gonna reap in 9 positive things, right? And more so maybe because just usually, like I said, perpetuates, right? And so it's very important, you become what you really think. And so that's kind of important. And so be careful what you think about, obviously, right? You know what I mean? And it's not, and it's very difficult, and you can't really control your thoughts. Remember, we can, to a degree, control some of our thoughts, but a lot of times they come randomly. And even if you control your thoughts, a lot of times it will push back and come back. So there's a study by Baumeister in Florida University. And I don't know how they did it, but they were able to study, thought and suppression of thought. And the study showed that if you just suppress a thought, it will come back 3 times as strong, right? And so here's an example, okay? I don't want you to think of a pink elephant. Mm-hmm. It's virtually impossible now that I said that, right? And so that goes to show you, once you have a thought, don't suppress it. And there are ways to get around that. We do teach those techniques here, right? And so one of them is acceptance of those thoughts too, as well, right? And or working through some of the thoughts processes will help you.
Dr. Lee, sorry, just yeah. If I don't mind, another great example too in regards to these thoughts and not necessarily having always full control over is a great example is dreaming. If we actually had full control over our thoughts,
Yeah.
these dreams we would be able to
Yeah.
manipulate and to have them. It's
Right.
no different of them popping up during the day, that they're just automatically, they're shifting in there, and we just have to, I think some of the tools that we have to do is acknowledgement, right? You're
Right.
saying don't suppress. The
Yeah.
suppress, it grows. It's like blowing on a fire.
Yeah.
If we let the fire sit, acknowledge it, and be aware of
Mm-hmm.
it, it will have
Mm-hmm.
a chance to smolder and go down. But we have
Mm-hmm.
to be aware of it. Is a big
Absolutely.
thing.
Yeah. So awareness and not suppression of your thoughts, whether it's negative or positive, actually, it doesn't, it works either way,
Yeah.
right? And so, accepting that those thoughts will help along the way. And so, if we know then that, let's say, our biggest asset, our goose is, our mind, and our mind generates all these thoughts, whether it's negative, positive, and this is why creativity and imagination is so important. Have you ever gone to a jam and you were able to come up with a solution all of a sudden, you know, somehow, some way, right? Or if you had a problem and you were trying to solve the problem, but you couldn't do it, 2 weeks later, you were doing the dishes and you had a eureka moment. You weren't actively thinking about it, right? But somehow, some way, the mind will continue to work in the background. So you have to have some faith, right? But you have to still set the stage. It means you have to actually think about the problem and whatnot, and the mind will take over the rest, right? And so, these studies that show that we use less than 10% of our mind, our brain power. So imagine that, right? And so I think a lot of us are underutilizing, our this statement: you become what you think, right? Now, it doesn't mean you're going to become a billionaire. I mean, there's probability. Remember, I said nothing is impossible. There's only probability. So you say, well, I'm not going to become a billionaire, or Jamie, you're not going to become a billionaire. I said, you're probably right, because the probability is 0.0000001%, right? Just kind of teasing that apart there for fun. But it doesn't mean it's not possible. And so how do we make things possible? You put effort into all the things you're doing. And so you invest into the goose, right? To give you that best chance. A lot of times we see people have things that we don't want, or we see things that people, are successful, multiple business, etc. All those things are the stars. They were lucky, and we say, well, you know what? They were so lucky. They made it. That one person. We hear it all the time. Rags to riches. That person was lucky. I mean, they just did it. And so, but a lot of times, and there are actually studies that show this, that pretty much every single individual rags to riches story had a lot of effort, work, failures, long journeys to get to where they are. And so there actually really no such thing, at least for myself. I don't think there's anything that truly is luck. Luck is usually preparedness meets opportunity. So the more you are prepared, the more you're able to recognize the opportunities. So have you ever actually tried to, and then my wife hates this. She tells me, I asked her, where's the certain spice in our spice cabinet. And she's like, it's, this shelf, whatever. And I go look, there's like freaking 30 of them and I can't find it. Right. And, and then like, I said, I can't find it. She says, right there, it's right there. And then she goes over and she points it behind something, it's sticking up a little bit. So right there, you just didn't look. I did look, but my mind was not there, right? It was not like really wanting to look for per se. Maybe we call that in the medical term scotoma, right? So it's there, but you have a blind spot, sort of, right? And so if you are prepared as much as possible, then you might be able to recognize the opportunity or the risks that you might want to take more, right? And if you are more prepared, the more prepared you are, you might be able to handle the bigger opportunities and therefore the bigger rewards as well, right? And so really, if you want to be prepared, then you need to invest in that goose, which is between your ears. So when do we stop learning, right? often we think that we stop learning when we finish school,
Mhm.
right? But when was the last time you sat down and read a book and learned, increased your knowledge, increased your skill, right? And so if you want to grasp the opportunity, make sure that you have the best opportunity, the best probability to achieve anything. Be prepared, right? And so that's very, very important to do.
I do
So
find it very
yeah,
interesting there, Dr. Lee,
yes,
in that sense of embedment of what you're looking for. So my drives, I drive 45 minutes, putting on audiobooks and things like that. But when I'm embedding that, the rest of the day feels very different. Like it feels
hmm
engaged. I am, it's that opportunity proportion that I'm finding all those things I'm listening through all day long. And I'm seeing that
right,
opportunity, but yet
right.
it's always been there. But that engagement, that embedding in there, that preparedness,
Yep.
that 45 minutes preparing in the morning, I'm able to kind of see all those things. So the embedding portion is very important to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And so for things to occur in your life, we start to have some thought or some reference of it. We have to have some form of thinking about or learning the process. And so this is why you're here, right? This is why people come to our clinics. We do so much transfer of knowledge. And to be honest with you, if you've been with us for a year, you probably had enough facts to, talk circles around your general practitioner, because in medical school, we get 1 or 2 lectures on nutrition, and that's about it, right? And we get really no teachings on, how to think, right? And, the mental health aspects as well, right? So and so that's why it's important for us to do that, right? So thinking, really, and so how do you generate these kind of thoughts? You say, well, Jamie, you should be thinking, so you want to learn as much as possible. Really, you have to dedicate some time for yourself. It's so important, and this can be me time, whatever, maybe to reflect on what you truly want, right? And so, one of the exercises that I do sometimes is that I write down 10 things that I desire. And you would think yourself really well, right? I can rhyme off 10 things and stuff like that. And you know, even after 2 weeks of writing every day in the morning, 10 things that I desire, I still can't remember the 10 things that that I write down the very first days. I have to look back, right? And so we forget a lot of the times the things that we're supposed to do or our way and whatnot. And so we need to remind ourselves from time to time. And this is why we, get off track, right? We lose motivation, perhaps, right? And so, and where do you think motivation comes from? It comes from your thoughts. Motivation needs motion, right? And all your thoughts will generate your motivation. So if you feel you're hungry, you have a thought about being hungry, well, you might be motivated to go to McDonald's, right? And so that's how powerful our thoughts are, and that's why I truly believe that you become what you think. Now, this is not wishful thinking. It's slightly different. So, this is, thinking about what you want in life, where you want to be, what you want to accomplish, your current goals, your future goals, how you achieve it. And so, did you notice that it's all stemming from questions that I'm asking myself, or you should be asking yourself, right? And so they all tie into each other. We should be always asking ourselves questions, right? And that will help you generate some of your motivation, right? So if you lost motivation, ask yourself the questions: why am I losing motivation? What direction am I going? And how is my performance? What did I do to have this performance, right? So these are self-reflection questions that we do all the time. And you know what? I do this pretty much every day. good and bad things. If it's good things, what did I do right to replicate that? I feel good today. I'm happier. People around me notice that. Like, what did I do differently? I mean, so you try to learn about yourself. But going back to motivation as well. Sometimes we lose motivation, right? And that's normal. Motivation is typically high when we start a little something, and if we things go away, we tend to continue to be really motivated. And then when things don't go our way, or we've plateaued a little bit, or we get really, really good at something, we get a little complacent, and then our success or performance goes down a little bit, and our motivation decreases over time, right? And so why does that happen? And how can we generate lasting, ongoing motivation? And that's like the key. If you had all the motivation in the world, you can probably accomplish a lot of things that you want to be. And so how do we generate that more? What's the source of that, right? And so what about you, Stan? What do you think the source of motivation is?
Well, this thing, I've done a lot of thoughts and communication around motivation just recently, and it's a hot question. Like, every patient's going to ask us about or communicate about motivation at some point or another. And I think it's a perspective thing, though. Like, motivation is what I see it and I feel it for myself is a label of a certain aspect that doesn't broaden out as much. Now, what I've been communicating about is a lot of the motivation that we speak about or people ask us about is the feeling, is that action to want to go. But yet we do a lot of things around motivation our whole day. And one of those ones that I kind of always pull it back to is, why do you brush your teeth in the morning? It's something that we were taught. It was very difficult to do at the very beginning. Your parents had to tell you, they had to check your toothbrush, you had to check if it's wet, but we do it now for a motivational point. Clean teeth, fresh breath. We've all got different reasons for brushing our teeth. There's that personal insight. It stemmed from, excuse me, but it stemmed from me in high school, hanging out with boys more. I wanted to have fresh breath. Well, it kind of set in that motion, but that motivation piece, I think it's really important to look at it in many perspectives as well, but it all comes from an actionable piece for me. Motivation doesn't come if I just sit there and do nothing, but it starts with the thought and then the action piece that kind of steps in there. But I think it's important, though, to broaden the perspective on what motivation actually is, because you were motivated most of your day to do most of the things, or you wouldn't move. You would be in bed, but we don't give that credit. And I think it's to highlight, and maybe some folks I've talked to this past week is like, well, let's brush our teeth throughout the day with other things as well, and see that when you start the action, then you're going to get that physical feeling of reward of that true motivation that you're looking for. So that's my perspective on motivation itself, around that labeling of what it is. And I think it can be a harmful label too, that we're always looking for something. Absolutely. Because we have to start that fire. It's something that is within us, and it's not something that just magically happens. You'll have more motivation at the beginning of a program of ours because you had a thought, you actually took action, and that's exciting from there. And then it kind of wears down. We have to find a new action. We have to find a new thought and kind of stem that, or ask ourselves why. Again, that we're in there. So that's my thoughts on motivation itself.
Yeah, and just to elaborate on what you're saying, motivation. Sometimes we feel like it just comes out of the blue, right? It's just like, oh, I'm not motivated to do that. You ask your son, to do something. My son to do something. He's not motivated. He doesn't want to do it. He's not motivated to do it, right? And so it doesn't happen out of the blue. Motivation just happens. We can create motivation, and so that's very important to understand. As we can create motivation, and I'm reminded of a story. A patient. So I'm a respirologist. I do a lot of lung cancer and a lot of smoking. And so I had this couple that came to me, and one of them is my weight loss patient. And the wife always comes with him. And sometimes we go into her health as we digress a little bit, and she smokes, right? And, obviously I said, try to cut down and stuff like that. I never forced anybody to do anything, but I just said, cut down as much as you can, etc. And so I just saw them about a month and a half ago, actually. And she tells me this story. So she was getting some investigations done, and she met with the oncologist and kind of with their investigations. And while she was sitting there with her nephew, her hands are in her jacket, and and then the oncologist said to her, unfortunately, what you have in your lung is lung cancer. And she was smoking up to this point, and as soon as she heard that, her hands were in her pocket, and her pack of cigarettes were in her pocket as well. And she immediately just crushed that pack of cigarettes. She took it out and she put it on the desk. Right? That's motivation. Right. So it was created, right? You know what I mean? There was a leverage. A lot of times we require certain leverage in order to create that motivation. And so in order to create the leverage, we must think of what will motivate us, what's important to us. If your back is against the wall, if you hit rock bottom, you'll be more motivated, right? And so you have to ask yourself these questions. And so why do we then lose some motivation over time? It's not that it disappeared. You know what you want. You're doing it, to a good degree, maybe beginning, maybe it waned off. It's actually we lose a bit of focus over time, or we get desensitized, we get habitual. It's normal, it's human nature. We get desensitized to a lot of things in our environment. So if you go in the same room all the time, and the first time you went in the room, you might be scanning the entire room, but as you go to the 100th time, you're just going to go straight to where you want to go. Right? So we get desensitized. So we need to actually refuel that. So we have to start to think again over, like you're saying, Sam, a different perspective. Keep asking ourselves questions to create that perpetual motivation. So motivation really comes from our questions that we're asking yourself, what's important to us, what we're doing, so this self-interrogation. That's where I think motivation comes from. And obviously there are a lot of influences to motivation. Like I said, to leverage what's important to us, right? For her, obviously that was the straw that broke the camel's back, right? That was, don't get me wrong, I'm sure she heard over the years, time and time again, that she should quit smoking. Even her grandchildren tells her to quit smoking. But it wasn't enough for her, right? Perhaps, she might have come to that conclusion if she sat down and started asking a lot of questions of value, all these things that might be important to her, for her to do that. And so ask yourself these questions, right? And so, okay, so
while you're pausing there just for a
yeah.
brief second, a clinical aspect from here is we'll sometimes have individuals that's on board find out that they have higher diabetic numbers or high cholesterol, medical concerns with their blood work, right? And it gets them kickstarted, really motivated, like, I don't like this. I'm going to make a big change. So then we get through the 12 months and we've seen reversals and much healthier blood work. Then all of a sudden we've seen a few patients say, all right, I'm healthy now. I haven't got to my goal, but I'm healthy. And that motivation piece then changes in there. So if you can kind of give it little tidbits in there of how that creation of like, okay, so I've become successful. It is rewarding there with my blood work, but I haven't got to my goal. How do I continue on from there? So we've actually had to intertwine a few people in to keep them going and to go beyond that goal, as well as what we're saying, without limitations.
Yeah. So when we think of, weight loss, a lot of people think about a certain number, right? And so if you go to certain clinics, they'll dive into the medical part of it as, unearth early conditions and stuff. Like, for example, diabetes, it just doesn't happen. You don't wake up one day, become diabetic, right? It's like years of punishment to the body, and you see early signs of insulin resistance, and we can measure that in our clinics and whatnot. And we know that once you have this, the chance of you having diabetes is really, really high. So, for example, if you had gestational diabetes, the chance of having like diabetes is 60% or something like that. It's extremely high. And so, so once you have a bit of success that you're seeing, we let our guards down, right? We lose a bit of focus, right? And so how do you regain that focus? So you start to examine your life, you examine, ask questions of what do you want next. You move your goals further. So you never stop improving yourself. If you do, what happens? Well, you get left behind. Time will continue. But if you don't continue with the time, you'll be in a standstill, right? And so in a lot of times what I recommend patients doing is, well, what do you want to achieve? So you've lost the weight. What was it you can't do? You can't run, you can't ride a bike, you can't walk up a hill. What's next? You want to build muscle, you want to fit into a certain clothes. So you continue to, so you see how each time when you come to us, when you come to the clinic, we're always asking you questions that will trigger thoughts in your mind. So there's a connection, right? Mm-hmm. Your questions will trigger your thoughts, and so that will help them to realign their focus, remotivate them, looking for something else to work towards, and this comes to, Maslow's hierarchy triangle. Typically in the beginning, it's survival, you the basic needs, and then you work on other, more pleasurable things. And then when you're like, for example, Bill Gates, become more philanthropic, and you become altruistic, and you donate your money and all that. So you work through these things. So as you get better in yourself, right, you still have to move your targets too as well. So really, it's re-examining your goals once you've achieved certain goals as well, right? And I just want to bring back to a couple of the the doubts that people have. I'm worried about sustaining the habits I'm learning after the year's done, and it's and I'm worried that I won't have the willpower to make change. There's not, I don't have a direct answer for that, right? Because there's lots of things that can influence a lot of this, right? But there are some things that, some ways to think about it. And so, one of the things that if you have done and you feel that you've done to your best ability, right? Changing your habits, learning as much as you can, then you can be really proud of yourself for giving you the best chance and probability. Now, you might think that, hey, you know what? I might slip one or two habits. Well, is that a failure? Right? Like you lose, like, let's say 50 pounds, and you slip a little bit, a month or two, and you gain back 10 pounds. Is that a failure? Right? And so we asked your definition of failure and what a sort of success is, right? Is that loss of success? So the opposite of failure, obviously. Is that a failure? Right? And so I think that if you have done that, you feel to your best ability, and this is where this next saying is so good. You become what you think, but your rewards in life is proportional to your efforts. So you become what you think, but you still have to have effort in order to achieve it, and your degree of success or rewards will be proportional to your effort. And that's a big self-reflection. That's a big mirror in front of us. You look yourself in the mirror. Did you do everything in your ability to succeed? It doesn't have to be weight loss per se, right? I mean, this applies to any aspects of your life, your professional, your personal, everything that we do. We can't be 100% all the time, but given the circumstances of everything, can you do that? Or are you giving yourself a lot of reasons to cushion the blow? Right? Could you have done something different? A lot of times we hear a lot of reasons and stuff like that. And so where does the responsibility come in? And I have a term for this. I call it deflection of responsibility. You can tell me all the reasons that you might have gained 10 pounds, but you still have gained 10 pounds, and it's still our responsibility. Right? And rather having the reasons, we want to think of the questions as how we can improve yourself and prevent that from happening again, move forward from that. Right? So that's important. So I don't have an answer, to your questions directly, but have faith, right? I'm
I do have a little tool though.
yeah,
I
yeah,
do have a little tool just for you guys to think about in that sense as
excellent.
well. And it's actually to provide two lists down. And
Yeah.
I would actually have you think about that first list of writing down all the things that you are successful at. The next list, what are the things that you are not as successful at? Behind each of those answers that you have is to write down the reasoning you came to that decision. Why, how did you come to that decision that you were good at it?
Hmm.
So what were those clinical steps? Now, this is just really step-by-step action, right? It is erasing all emotions in here. It's just the actionable elements. So those, what were the steps that made you so successful there? Because we're able to have a look at the reasonings of those and hopefully help you implement and put them into some of these other elements that you're not as, because no doubt when you're looking at those lists, you do not do the same actions. We do not give the same dedication, the same thoughts is the
Hmm.
big thing, across to those same lists. And I think it's important to actually reflect and think about the reasonings of why you make that statement of why
Hmm.
you were good at something or why you were not. And then think about, did you give yourself full opportunity? Doesn't mean that list of things that you're not good at that is going to shift across to the good. They will become better, but it is no reflection on there of how much better they are,
Hmm.
but you're going to be able to approach them more open-mindedly and with healthier thoughts
Hmm.
as you get going. So I think it's important to think about the reason behind
Hmm.
those decisions as you go, but is to actually journal them. It's really important to
Hmm.
put these things down. Dr. Lee's already talked about putting down, the 10 list of items of things that you desire. And if I were to ask you right off the air right now, what did you eat for Thursday dinner? It takes some time, but we have to
Hmm.
invest in yourself, invest in
Hmm.
those reasons as you get going. So I just wanted to share that tool because I think
That's
it's
great. Yeah.
important. It is step by step. It is a
Hmm.
ration of emotions,
Hmm.
but I think sometimes we just have to run when those emotions are high or low and
Hmm.
just put actionable steps in as well.
Absolutely. Just going to the in another kind of and it kind of all ties. This all ties in together. That's why we ask these questions, right? Is sorry here. I won't. I'm worried that I won't have the willpower to make a change, right? You know, that's kind of like predicting the future. Can you keep the weight off, etc., and stuff like as well. Um, you know, willpower. Is one of those terms that gets tossed around a lot. And we think successful people have the most willpower. People sometimes say, "Oh, Jamie, you have such a good willpower. You say no to this and no to that. What I mean, in the office, right?" But the studies have actually shown by the same actually psychologists is that we actually all have a very similar amount of willpower, and that goes across the board, right? But what the successful individuals that look like they have better willpower do better than other individuals is shape their environment to their advantage. That's very important, right? And so really it's not about willpower, is the ability to adapt to the situation, roll with the punches, make modifications as you are going along, right? And so, for example, if you are going out, you make a concession on maybe certain things, right? And so, or you go out a little less as you lose more weight, right? So these are the things. So to willpower, um, you know, is not. No one has more willpower than any other individual. You have the same willpower as myself, but it's just the way we shape our environment to our advantage, right? So think about that now. A couple last things. I know it's 7 o'clock, almost 7 o'clock. I want a couple last thoughts here. It's very difficult to predict the future. We can connect the dots when we look back very easily, right? How you got to your current position. But it's impossible for us to connect the dots when we look forward, when where we want to go. How are you going to lose 50 pounds? You you want to get there, but you don't know all the steps. You might know the first 1 or 2 steps. There might be 100 other steps. So how are you going to connect the dots? And you can't. It's impossible. No one has a crystal ball, right? Having said that, though, there's something that we all have inside of us, and that's faith. Whatever you call it, karma, whatever you believe in, you have to actually believe in that thing, that things will work out, right? And to increase your probability is to prepare yourself, right? And remember, you have to think, of the things that you want to become. And then, being prepared will allow you to see the opportunities and the next steps that may present in front of you. And naturally, you will start to move in the right direction. So if you think about constantly about a healthy life, you will intuitively, naturally, the energy wise will move towards that as well, right? And so you don't have to worry about the future too much. Worry about the present, being prepared, giving your best, giving your best effort day in and day out. Things will happen. Have faith in that, whatever you want to call it, right? And so I hope that helps everybody. I hope we answer some of the questions. I know we're not able to answer all the questions, and as Sam said, we will try to answer other questions, and just email us your questions. Sorry, not your questions, but also your doubts and fears, and we will try to support you, give you a different perspective to think about things. And I want to leave you with the 5 self-interrogation questions that you should be thinking. And obviously 5, and there may be hundreds of each one, right? But it starts with 5. One is, who am I? What am I doing? Slip my mind there. So who am I? What am I doing? Where am I going? When am I going to get there? And how am I going to get there? Those 5 questions should be fundamental to you. Obviously, within each question, you have a ton of questions within itself to actually help you answer those questions. And by asking yourself these questions, be imaginative, be creative. Don't give yourself the limits, that you may already have. These are just questions, right? You can come up with any answer, but at least it gives you a sense of who you are, where you're going, all those things that we actually try to get you to self-discover. So I hope that, our conversation today, really was just me and Sam, but obviously you guys chimed in with the chat and whatnot. And, if we ever have something like this again and you guys enjoy it, we encourage you to show your face, because we're just like you. We want to communicate, support one another. And we want to hear your insights. You have your experiences as well, but this will help you grow as an individual, right? So if you enjoy this, give us some input, through our emails and stuff like that, that this was, not good session and whatnot. But if, we were able to spark something in you, give you some insight, I think we are very happy tonight.
And I just wanted to end here as well, just in regards to one little comment that's in there. I just want to state that you all feel alone with these emotions, but we did a talk today because everybody has them. At this point now, I'm just going to read the last sentence here. I wrote these words, but then there was a question period there, but then you go and say them. You're right, because that we are prepared for this. This is very common elements that we do deal with. So I was very happy to hear that, you wrote the words and then we went out and stated them. That's what we're here for. So please don't feel alone. Reach out. These feelings that we have are very common within failure or motivation when it comes to any actionable piece or something that's new or that we're continuing on. So please do reach out, whether it's patients of ours that are in our webinar tonight, in our appointments that we do have here in clinic or virtual, or if you're not a patient of ours, please message us at info@howclinics.com, or you're able to go over to our website, howclinics.com, and message us there in our comments section as well. But we hope that we've answered some of your questions and given you some insight and some thoughts to start with as you get going. And I hope that you all take care. And we will see you again on our next webinar coming up next month itself. And I'm just jumping across over here briefly once again, like usual. But we're going to be looking at overcoming plateaus and staying motivated. So it's one of those things that will somewhat continue on a very similar conversation of what we are having today, but really looking at how do we transition past plateaus and keep that motivation going as well. So I hope to see you all there. We may even produce that one very similar to this. We'll see Dr. Lee on the back end there, but we'll keep you all involved, and we'll speak to you all later.
Well, one last thing.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I will send you my definition of success, and for those people that are here, and so just to compare and contrast, just a different perspective, of what I feel success is, and it goes to, it's hard not to feel like a failure, and so that just hit me, and I just want to say to those individuals here, we'll send my definition of success, and hopefully it will kind of like give you a different perspective of what failure is and what success is.
Excellent. So yeah, hopefully by end of week, I do have everyone who's registered, so you will receive that email from us with that definition. It's something that you can have in your email, print it out, put it on your fridge, whatever it needs to do to keep in your vision, to keep you stemmed and thinking as you get going.
Have a good night,
All right.
everyone.
Thanks for joining, guys. Bye.